All right, welcome to part one of the Managing Madrid podcast. This is a segment about the very awesome story of Tifo Football, and I am thrilled to be joined by somebody who I wanted to have on the podcast for a long time. I call him the Morgan Freeman of football audio. He has an unbelievable voice. I'm sure you've all heard his voice for Tifo Football. He narrates most of the videos there. So joining me today of Tifo Football is Joe Devine. How you doing?
I'm well, thanks very much. What a lovely
Did I
compliment.
say that right? Divine?
That's
Divine?
right, yeah.
Okay. I realized when I was introducing you there that it may have been the first time I had ever said it. So
No, don't
once you
worry.
say something out loud for the first time, it catches you off guard.
My teachers used to call me Divine when they met me for the first time, so you wouldn't have been far off if you had got it wrong. But no, Divine is right.
So this time of year for you, like, does it matter that there's a Champions League final? Does it like rev up? Is it like more intense in the content now, or before leading up to the Champions League final, and then afterwards, do you have like a little bit of a break? It's like off season, or is it just nonstop for you?
To be honest, it's pretty much the same for us. That there'll be periods of the year where we try and push out an extra video here or there, and so actually the week just past, we did do that, and we released a tactical preview of the Champions League final. Which is a little unusual for us content-wise. Normally we make videos that are slightly more evergreen in nature, but with an event that's as big as the Champions League, we like to dip our toe into the news cycle there. So there'll be times of the year where we do a little more, but to be honest, as a result of things like the lead time of creating the videos, generally speaking, we're talking about a week or two. It's not like we can just pump out loads more at any given time. So we are mostly at capacity. We have a team of 3 designers and a head designer, and generally speaking, the 4 videos that we release every week is about the most that we can manage most of the time. So it's pretty consistent, if very, very busy.
It's really incredible, and I mean, because we started something with a similar idea. So we had started something called School of Real Madrid. It was a YouTube channel, and it still exists, and we may actually reignite it at some point. But for now, it's kind of dormant. But it was we wanted to do like video analysis, and we didn't have the rights to use actual videos to do tactical analysis. So our way around it was kind of just to copy your model in a way and use animation, and that is insanely difficult to do. And when I actually started to do it, it became very evident. First of all, like we didn't have like the level that you guys have, like Philip Fenner, who does unbelievable work for you guys. Yeah. And I've gotten in touch with him a couple times about various things. It's incredible the way he illustrates those videos for you. But the sheer like amount of work and time it takes, the fact that the guy we were using, it took him at least a whole entire weekend for one video, and even then it was very basic stuff. And so for that reason, you can't really do time sensitive stuff. So when you guys do time sensitive stuff, it's pretty amazing to me. So, but it's so difficult to do and to have that consistent. That's why I admire what you guys do, because a lot of these channels can come and go, but you guys have stayed around and it's been growing constantly. And I had a quick glance at the Champions League final preview you guys did, and it had over 300K views at the time that I just glanced at it. It's probably more now, I don't know. But I also, part of the reason I wanted to speak with you, Joe, was because we have something on this podcast called Journalism Corner, where we talk about journalism. And so a lot of people are interested in just the journalism side of things. And I think your story fits with that corner a lot. There's a lot there that I think people can learn from. So maybe can you start us from the very beginning, like before Tifo existed? Because I'm curious to know like why you got into this and how you thought of the idea.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the very beginning would be remarkably boring because I ran a pub for a few years. So I doubt the listeners want to hear about that.
That actually sounds like it might be the best part. I don't know.
To be honest, it was fun. But around that time when I was working in the pub, my sister Alice, who works with us now, she's our supervising producer and she heads up the design team. She had just finished illustration university, and actually one of her classmates was Philippe, who, as you mentioned, is with us now and makes many of our Tifo videos. And Alice and Phil, they were both working in pubs as well, I think, and they weren't really doing any artwork, and they were keen to sort of spend some of their free time doing something that they enjoyed. And so Alice asked me if I wanted to start a blog with her so that she could do some illustrations and I could do some writing, which is something that I was pretty keen on at the time as well. And I said that I would do that as long as we did it about football, because I loved football back then. I mean, I still like it now, not quite as much. And it was on every day in the pub, and it was something that, we would chat as the staff, we would chat to regulars about, and we would watch every game. And I think, through sort of passive inattention almost, you end up learning quite a lot, or at least I would describe myself at an advanced level for, not a professional in terms of my knowledge of football at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started a podcast called The Illustrated Game, and we started a Tumblr blog. I don't know if you remember Tumblr. It was a cool thing from the past. Yes. And Alice and Philippe would do these incredible hand-drawn and sometimes painted illustrations, and I would write pieces along with some other people who were contributing to the written side of it too. We met a lot of people through recording this podcast, one of whom was Alex Stewart, who works at Tifo now and writes a lot of our tactical content as well as being our senior content strategist. And it sort of set us up, really. I mean, we met so many people, just inviting people to guest on our show. At the time, we were recording with a sort of almost a tape recorded Tascam in the middle of our living room, so we would meet people in real life as well. They would just come around the flat that we were living in, and we'd all sit around and have a drink and talk about football. It was really fun. And that sort of fell by the wayside as people got other jobs, or we moved out and had other things going on. And I sort of kept an eye on writing, kept an eye out for any jobs that were popping up. And all of a sudden, there was this website called Tifo Football, which was run by a guy called Neil Clerk, and also Seb Stafford-Bloor, who works with us at Tifo still now. They were hiring for a social media manager, and I'd written a couple of pieces for them already. And Alex and I decided that we would apply for the job together and sort of job share it throughout the week because we had other responsibilities at the time. So we did that, and we were successful, and we started doing Twitter and Facebook and whatever, and split the week in half. Another opportunity came up for Alex a few months later, and so he left, and I took the job on full time. And to be very honest with you, Kian, I sort of felt a little guilty because there wasn't that much to do, and I was paid for a full-time job. And so I tried to fill my day, so as to ensure that I was a good employee. And in that time, I don't know, about maybe 9 months or a year after I'd started, I was trying to create some new video concepts. So we'd made a few videos already, and we tried a few different strategies, and some of them were a little funnier, and some of them were a little more avant-garde. And I realized that we had all of this written material that was coming in for the editorial site, and there were a group of about 12 writers maybe who were being paid on a regular basis to write for umaxitfootball.com. So we had all of this material that we were only really getting one use out of, and we tried to see if there was a way that we could adapt those articles and create a video from them. And so the first thing I tried was I wrote something myself. It was about John Stones, and I think it was something about how different people's perspectives on John Stones kind of change what the pervasive football narrative is around a player. Essentially, lots of people call him rubbish, and he's not. And we made that video, released it on YouTube, and that was the first in the sort of recognisable Tifo format. And it just did exceptionally well. And I mean, I knew it was good when I was making it. I mean, retrospectively, I think it's awful. But at the time, I thought this, we were onto something good. But I didn't quite realise how popular it would be. And over the course of the following 2 or 3 years, the videos became more and more popular to the point where we pivoted the business to focus purely and then eventually solely on our video content. And that was how I got my start.
So I mean that's amazing because it's literally a story of like you started from scratch, and I think that a lot of people will struggle with like where do you even start with something like this? Like if I have an idea, how do I put it into fruition? And you actually did it, and over time you developed into this incredible thing. Now that it's part of The Athletic, and we'll get there. But what advice would you give to somebody who is in that position? Maybe you were running the bar years ago. Like, if that idea pops into their head, what would you tell them to kind of be a voice in their brain to tell them to push forward with it?
I think you said it yourself. I mean, I think the first thing is to just try everything, right? And the reality of Tifo's story is that there were duds at the beginning. There were false starts, and as I said, we tried a few different video concepts, all of which I look back on fondly now, but we're never going to be particularly popular, and certainly would have never helped us get to the stage that we're at now. We didn't really start with a particular tone in mind either. I think Tifo has developed over time to have the voice that it does. But the stuff that we tried beforehand was very light, was very humorous, or at least it was intended to be. It was built to be an accompaniment to something else, and it didn't work. So I guess the best piece of advice would be to just keep trying things. As I said, I had a feeling that it was a good idea when I was trying it, but I had no idea how it was gonna pan out. So I suppose the advice really is to try everything as much as you can, not to feel set back by setbacks, and also to get lucky, because I certainly did. I was in a job that afforded me the time and the space and the autonomy to attempt to be creative, and to be honest, off the back of really no no proof that I could do that. So I got very lucky in that regard, and a lot of money went into Tifo as well, right? I mean, it grew quickly, but it took time to grow to the place where it could sustain the business, and so over that period of time, there was money being put into the company to pay for people's salaries and to make sure that we could afford to make enough videos to continue growing. So there were a lot of elements of that were completely out of my control, and that I was very lucky to be party to. But yeah, generally speaking, I would say just do things, and don't, I would say talk about them less and do them more.
So did the funding, did it come from outside, or was it funded through YouTube ads? Because it's always kind of fuzzy to me how much people make on YouTube, and I don't necessarily mean to ask that to get nitty gritty details of that, but just yeah. What was that process like of the funding? Did you kind of have a goal in your mind, like, okay, we'll fund it until this point, or was there money coming in from YouTube? How did that work?
Well, our goal was always to break even, which we did a few months before we eventually were acquired by The Athletic. So, which was nice, and that was a long held goal, and something that we'd been sort of on target to and on track for a while. YouTube AdSense is, as I'm sure having run a YouTube channel yourself, Kian, is not particularly it doesn't really bring in a huge amount of money. Now, obviously, if you have a huge channel and you get a huge number of views, then it can be significant, and particularly for individuals who are or traditional YouTubers who are running the channel on their own, then it can be a significant amount of money. But for Tifo, a company that employs numerous people, it's difficult to get to a place where the revenue from that is paying everybody's salaries. So the reality is that you have to look elsewhere too, and that would be mostly external commercial deals for us. We also did a lot of video production externally, so we made white label video products for other companies, generally speaking, to explain stuff or to explain their product or whatever. And we also had a lot of internal investment from Neil, who was the founder of the company, which sustained us to the point of the sale.
When somebody, I guess it is, I'm interested in a lot of things. One of the things I was really interested about hearing it in your words is, because you have so much content on Tifo, like there's a lot of different topics that go up. I see a lot of women's football content now, which is great. You dive deep into history, to politics. Like it's not just football tactics and everything. It's everything else too. When somebody pitches an idea your way, what are you looking for? Are you thinking, okay, so this idea, does this bring us traffic? Or is there something else? Are you trying to diversify your topics? What is it that kind of makes or breaks a pitch for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's that it doesn't exist in anywhere other than in the ether or in our minds, but there is a tick box list, and those things might be, we would need 2 or 3 out of 5 ticks to consider a video. One of those would be how many views can this get, because ultimately that's very important to the bottom end of our business. Another would be, how does this diversify the offering that we have on the channel? We're keen, as and when possible, to make videos about international football rather than just the Premier League or Real Madrid and Barcelona. We want to be able to provide video content for people who are supporters of smaller clubs who naturally aren't covered by national press or many of the other big YouTube channels. So there's that too. The main one is, does this interest me? And personally, me and to an extent Alex and Seb as well have always been the target market for Tifo. We make stuff that we would want to watch, and that's why Alex makes a lot of heavily tactical or statistical videos, because he's curious about that side of things. And there's the reason that we have videos on the channel that have sometimes a bit of a geopolitical bent is because that's an area that I'm particularly interested in, and those are the stories that if I were to read or see in video form elsewhere, I would want to watch until the end. So that's more of an imprecise science and more difficult to explore and explain, I suppose. But that's definitely there. And the final one is probably more cynical than the rest, and very occasionally means that we just decide against a video if we can't find a solution. But how easily can I title this in a way that might make people want to watch it? And that that's a different thing from clickbait, which we vociferously avoid at Tifo. But we're very aware of the impact that a good title can have. So if there is a story that's slightly too diffuse or tries to cover too broad an area, generally speaking, we either look for the more narrow focus within that story, or we discount it because it makes it whether or not it's worth covering or has value. If it's too difficult for us to sell and package, then it's a story for someone else and not for Tifo.
Yeah, I'm a clickbait apologist in some ways. Like I don't cross the line, and I think there's a line that can't be crossed with clickbait. Like you can't mislead people, but but the reality is, and I always tell my writers this when we're thinking about headlines, you can write the greatest piece of all time, and if nobody clicks on it, it goes to waste. So you got to entice the reader a little bit just to click on the article, and then go from there.
Yeah. And unfortunately for you guys with your written content, the aggregators are so forceful with that it really makes that exceptionally important, and that's mostly the case on YouTube as well. But given that Tifo is of a particular size now, that I'm pretty sure we could release something, the least clickable video that we could conceive of, and 30,000 people would still watch it, a kind of core group of people who watch every video. I feel like Tifo is in a position where we can be a little bit more lax about that, and we can have one eye on the longer term brand view, by which I mean people are sick of clickbait. People are sick of content on the internet which overpromises and underdelivers, and there's a real thirst for authenticity, and that's partly what the concept of Tifo is built around. It's a slower growth, and it's a slower promise over a longer period of time. But our aim, when we title something, there is that line that you describe, but for us, there's one more thing that's connected to that, which is, which allows us to push a little further into the unclickable range. Which is essentially, if someone clicks on this and it's exactly what we've promised them, and they can recognize from watching the content that this is almost too lightly packaged, and they see that a number of times, they'll grow to trust the channel a lot more than they would otherwise. And I think that's what we're trying to do. You can see that from some of the metrics that we would measure behind closed doors. We can see that we have an exceptionally engaged audience versus other channels or other audiences of a similar size to ours. And I think it's the part of that virtue is as a result of building brand loyalty and brand trust by being a little more authentic and attempting to avoid sort of tricking people at all costs.
For sure, and I think you can measure that even. Just from the public side, not just behind closed doors, just with tangible things like any of the scripts that I've written for Tifo, you can kind of, but anytime I watch a Tifo football video, it's you can tell by the amount of views it gets almost right away. You can tell by the like to dislike ratio, but you can also tell by the comments when they will comment on something so specific. in the video that's something that happened like maybe 7 minutes in. So they're really paying attention. They're commenting on those things. And I almost found that interesting. And then you see a lot of comments like, before I even watched the video, I saw Tifo Football and I pressed like. So you see a lot of those people too who have given you a loyal following, I think. And also it's, I think the world, you're right. The world is thirsty for that kind of analysis, that kind of authenticity. I completely agree with you. What do you guys, what's your vision for Tifo? Like, is there something beyond football? Because I believe it's still called Tifo Football.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've seen things pop up like NBA related and stuff. So what's the direction that it's heading in?
So we do have an NBA channel, which is dormant at the moment,
Okay.
mostly just due to capacity issues when we started it. There are a few different things that we could do. We are undecided at the moment. And we have long-term goals, mostly the straightforward ones, like trying to reach 1 million subscribers. And actually, we passed 800,000 the other day, and
It's a big milestone.
it's a big milestone.
Congrats.
And actually, it feels significantly closer to 1 million than 799,000 did. So I had a bit of a moment the other day when I thought,
Yeah.
goodness me, I need to think about what our next goal is after that, because that's been a big one for a long time. So yeah, hopefully we'll reach that point maybe early in 2021. But we could expand into some other sports if we wanted to. I mean, there are things beyond sports as well that we could expand into. There's also other formats that we might expand into. In fact, I'm not sure when this episode's being released, but at the end of September, this might be a little exclusive for you, Kian. We are releasing a new type of video on the Tifo Football YouTube channel, which does incorporate elements of the animation that people will recognize, but also one or two other things too. And we're putting an awful lot of time into it. I think it's unlike anything that you would find elsewhere. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we can make something which fits every need, but is also unique, and it maintains sort of Tifo's voice and feel whilst building something new at the same time. So I'm really excited for that, and those videos will be a little longer than the ones that we release at the moment too. So I'm curious to see how well they will perform. But yeah, in that vein, there are other things that we could do too, and yeah, making longer videos or expanding outside the format a little bit, I think is something that's certainly of interest to us.
That was kind of an exclusive and kind of not, because you left it so mysterious and vague that we still have no idea what it actually is.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I think Wednesday,
but
unless this changes, Wednesday the 23rd of September,
Okay.
we're going to release something very different to what we've released before.
Yeah, the NBA stuff, it took me, I really would be interested if you actually ever got into that. Seth Partnow, who is one of my favorite follows on Twitter.
Yeah.
He actually, funny with him, I knew him I knew of him before he kind of got big, because he, before like anybody really knew who he was, I had a little small Toronto Raptors blog.
Right.
And he kind of quote unquote applied and wanted to write articles for it, and he wrote some articles for it. That website doesn't exist anymore. And then kind of like, so we follow each other very early in the Twitter game, and boom, now he's just like, he's working for NBA teams, working for the Athletic, and I love him. Like his stuff on basketball is really great. So when I saw that he collaborated with Tifo and he had a video with you guys, I got really excited, and I was like, oh, is this going to be NBA stuff now? I'd be really excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I want to continue at some point. For us, it's always a question of not spreading ourselves too thin, which is something we've done in the past. Hence the channel, NBA channel, now being dormant. But I outside of football, my sort of second favorite sport is probably basketball, and so that's one of the reasons that we chose that to experiment with. But I would hope at some point that we can return to doing that. It's just a question of how much time and capacity we have.
So when you become big as a company, as a publication, as a platform with all your content, people tend to seek you out. Like, right? You get noticed. You eventually get big enough where you can put in, I wouldn't say less effort, but you're not quite sending a million emails to different things trying to get people to notice you as much, right? So with, for example, Bundesliga content, because I know the Bundesliga hired you guys to do some stuff, and now the Athletic acquiring Tifo. Is that what happened, that you just got so big they noticed you, or were you reaching out to them? How did that work?
Well, in the Bundesliga's case, they came to us, which was lovely.
Mm.
And it was really fun to work with their channel for a couple of years. That's managed by some really smart and lovely people. And it was also really fun for us to be able to work with live footage for the first time too,
Yeah.
and try our hand at analysis with that. So that was a real learning curve for us from a video production perspective. The Athletic approached us when they arrived in the UK in the summer, or I suppose in the late spring before they launched over here, so that we're talking about 2019 at this point. And initially we had a sponsorship agreement where they sponsored some of the videos on our channel over a long-term period, and that conversation just kind of naturally evolved. We've sort of been lucky at Tifo for a couple of reasons, one of which is that YouTube is very irritating if you're struggling to get the algorithm on side, but when it is on side, it's fantastic in proliferating your content. So actually, we didn't really ever do any paid marketing, and we never really had to do a lot of, beyond attempting to find commercial deals for ourselves, which, we sent an awful lot of emails and had an awful lot of, boring agency meetings and stuff like that. Generally speaking, people came to us, and it was normally because someone who worked at, Company X was a football fan, and they watched videos about football on YouTube, and they'd found Tifo, and they were really into it, and they connected the dots about what our commercial agreement could be in their own head before we'd even had the meeting, which was very, very useful for us. Now I suppose we're just sort of inundated with contact all the time, and for us, it just taking the step with the Athletic just felt like the perfect thing to do at the moment that we did. I think our most sort of the most important thing that we analysed before we made that decision was the voice that the Athletic has, the brand values that they have, and what they're attempting to do with their sort of sports journalism content. And it was all so similar to what we were doing with Tifo that it just felt like the perfect match, really. I think we could have waited for another 5 years and maybe made some more money, but we never would have found another company that would have supported us in doing what we were already doing, who could grasp why Tifo works, and who would allow us to continue creating some of the more niche things that we do. So it's the perfect marriage, really.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounded like they came in and asked you to to burn everything and start it from scratch and go in a completely different direction, right? Yeah. Last thing, can you walk us through your day? Like, what's your routine? Like, what's your role now with Tifo?
Well, yes, I can. My days are all very different, but they're mostly filled with meetings, I will say. I'm looking at my calendar now to see what. Today's been a very easy day, actually, which was lovely. I had a meeting this morning which lasted for 2.5 hours with my colleague Seb over Zoom, and we were talking about this new video concept and fleshing out parts of the script for it. There was an editorial meeting which includes everyone from the UK Athletic, which is really interesting for me because I get to hear a lot about what's going to be published on the written side of things over the next few days, and what the longer term goals are that they're working on, and how Tifo and the podcast and stuff can integrate with that. So that's fantastic. I'm speaking to you doing a podcast now, which is great fun.
Sorry. Now, sorry I threw this into you in an easy day.
I have another Tifo editorial meeting later where Alex and Seb and I get together to chat about what the week looks like, or what next week looks like, or what we're all working on long term. We have 3 podcasts to record this week as part of the Sensible Transfer series that we're doing at the moment. There are voiceovers for me to record for the videos that are being released next week, so I'm going to try and get ahead of that. I bought 4 books about a different sport that I need to read, so I'm going to try and make a start on that today as well. And there's about 7 people that I need to call as soon as we stop talking to each other. So it's mostly administrative stuff nowadays. The voiceovers are about as close that I get to the actual creation of the videos, which is for the best, really, because the designers are all significantly more talented than I am. And that sort of initial conversation about, what the ideas might be or how we might title them, I'm involved in that too. But everything else is at a sort of broader level nowadays. So that's changed a little bit over the years. When we started, I did literally everything before a video was released. But over time, it's been nice to just sort of hand off bits of that job, every few months whenever a new role was created. Now I'm so far away from them that I can almost see them objectively.
So you don't just wake up and make these amazing YouTube videos and have an incredible time doing it. They don't just magically appear. You mean there's actual hard work behind the scenes that people should know about?
Imagine that. My favorite comments on the channel. And do you know what? I used to think like, oh, why don't these people understand? But now I'm glad that they don't. I'm glad that there are people out there who think that this is possible. They think that one person does everything for the channel. They think that they think that Tifo is just a pseudonym for one guy who's sat in his basement doing the voiceovers, making the videos, writing the scripts, like doing everything. Which does amuse me, but I suppose that's the format, isn't it? That's the medium. That's what usually the case is with YouTube to a certain level, good for anyone that's doing it that way.
Wow, that Tifo guy got really lucky, man. He woke up one day and all of a sudden he's like doing all these YouTube videos, the athletic works. That's so lucky, right. Man.
Now he's saying the wrong thing about my club.
yeah, and that's and you guys do so many different topics that I'm sure you're bound to run into a couple of people here and there. One thing that I did forget I wanted to ask you that I just got reminded of.
Yeah.
So that YouTube channel that I did, the Real Madrid one, it was myself, Omarvin, and Naguib. He was our animator,
mm-hmm.
and we all kind of had our roles. So and I would share script writing duties. Naguib would do the animation, and I would be the narrator. And I realized it might have been the most difficult thing I've done in journalism so far was narrating a video, because I can have a conversation over a podcast, fine. Like it's quite easy for me. It wasn't always easy. I had to work on it. But the narration, there's something about reading almost like a monologue or a script that I kept getting in my head. I kept on stumbling my words. I had to do multiple takes. Did you go through that, or was it seamless for you? And if you had to go through that, what did you do to kind of get better at it?
Oh, totally. I mean, I go through that now. I mean, it varies from day to day. There'll be some days where I will read through a script that I've never read before, and I'm seeing for the first time. And I will read it at the natural pace of the video, and it will sound amazing, and my mouth won't make these horrible clicking noises. And, it will be the perfect time of the day, so it's not the morning where I'm having to sort of cough repeatedly. It's not the evening when I've smoked so much that I sound like Leonard Cohen. It's just the perfect sweet spot around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's wonderful. And when that happens, nowadays I put my hands together and I think that was fantastic. I'm going to be grateful that was so easy, because other days it's not. It's hard, man. And you get to the stage where you're just reading the same sentence 7 times. The things that I would practice to improve at that are remembering the tone that I ended, or the intonation that I ended the previous sentence on. Because when you cock up a sentence and you have to re-say it 7 times, you forget where you are in the tone. And I pride myself on not only my editing work, but also my tone memory, so that, when you listen to a voiceover all the way through, it sounds like I've just said it. Whereas the reality is that there are a significant number of edits that I have to make, and, loads of places where I mess it up and have to cut it out. And, it really just depends on the day. But also trying to have fun with it. It's 4 of them a week is a fair amount of work when the scripts can be around 10 minutes long. It doesn't. I think the assumption would be that that's a 10-minute job, but the reality is it's not. It probably takes me twice as long as however long the eventual video is going to be to record it, and then twice as long again to actually edit it properly. And when you do that,
that's
and
honestly
edit
pretty
yourself, good. I mean, I've got it down to a T now, but. When you do that and you edit yourself on such a regular basis, and you will understand this from editing your podcast as well, and this is something up until very recently that I did for Tifo as well, edited all the podcasts. Mm-hmm. You hear your voice in a very different way, and I think the only way to sort of maintain some fun and amusement is to do weird and stupid things, or pronounce words in a slightly different way, or try something new and have fun with it. I'm always gesticulating, like moving my arms around wildly in the room when it's just me. I think, in fact, I worked in an office up until the lockdown recently. It was just Tifo's little office. It was, generally speaking, just me, but we had glass windows in the doors, and a massive one wall was basically just glass window. There were other offices on our floor, and so I would be recording voiceovers as people were walking past and watching me, and that took me a long time to get used to, but I think has hugely benefited me now that I'm back in the comfort and privacy of my own home, because nothing stops me. The phone will ring, I'll carry on. It's great.
Right. Yeah, and that just comes with experience and
Totally.
and kind of just having a natural feel and flow for it, right?
And not being afraid to look and sound stupid.
For sure. I always say that too. It's like you got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You'll be amazed at how much you can grow from those. Like for you, it was maybe just those people walking by. And it's amazing, like you said, like if you're reading the same sentence 7 times. For me, the most glaring discovery with that was that it doesn't get easier the 7th time. You'd think like the logic would tell you that you just keep doing it and eventually you'll get it. No, it actually becomes, to me anyway, it became more difficult each time I did it because I kept thinking about the mistakes I made last time, and then you would just keep getting, it's like this spiral, this loop. So sometimes I would have to just step away for a few seconds, get a drink, and then come back.
Also,
I mean, it's
you
difficult.
say bananas 7 times in a row or more, and the word loses all meaning. I mean, like that's exactly the same thing. I would encourage people listening to stop and say bananas as many times as they can, and hear how that sounds, because that's exactly what Kian is hearing in his head.
Yeah, 100%. I guess that's the science behind the tongue twisters too. That's why they're so difficult. It's really tough. Likewise, I think like if you put a video camera in front of me and I'm talking with somebody, it's easy for me. But the moment you put a video in front of me and it's just me, so who, like, how does I don't know if I'd be able to do that. I've actually tried, and it's extremely difficult.
That's hard. Yeah, like when there's no audience to play to, I think that's much more difficult. Yeah,
100%. Okay, I think I've kept you long enough, because you have 7 people you have to call after this, and I will let you get back to your very busy day. Joe, thank you for coming on the podcast. I know you are busy. Thank you for everything you do with Tifo. And I really sincerely mean that, because you guys bring so much value to the football analysis world, and the way you tell that story has been hugely beneficial for this entire industry. So thank you. I think on behalf of everyone, for all the work that you've done and for finding this thing.
Oh, well, thanks very much. That's I appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe. Take care.